Brave Grandma Stories. After 15 days in the hospital, I returned home only to find that my daughter-in-law and her family had taken over everything. When my son closed the door in my face, I knew I would have to fight to get back what was mine. But what I discovered later exceeded my worst nightmares. The afternoon sun streamed through the hospital window as the nurse removed the last bandage from my chest. 15 days after a complicated heart surgery, I was finally being discharged. At 70 years old, all I wanted was to return to my home, the house that Frank, my late husband, and I had built with so much effort during 4 decades of marriage. "Will someone be coming to pick you up, Mrs. Bennett?" asked the nurse as she helped me fold the hospital gown. "My son Thomas will come," I replied, though I felt a twinge of doubt inside. Throughout my stay, Thomas had barely visited 3 times, always in a hurry and avoiding looking me in the eyes. His wife Amanda had come more often, but her visits left me with a strange feeling. She always reviewed the medical reports, spoke privately with the doctors, and asked me to sign papers that, according to her, were simple insurance formalities. I waited in the hallway for an hour, but Thomas didn't show up. Finally, I called a taxi. As I rode down the elevator, I remembered the last visit from my granddaughter Lily, 5 years old, who had innocently asked me, "Grandma, why don't you come home anymore?" The taxi stopped in front of my house on Maple Street. My heart skipped a beat when I saw an unfamiliar car parked in the driveway. It was a shiny black SUV I had never seen before. I paid the driver and, with legs still weak from the operation, slowly walked toward the front door. Before I could take out my keys, the door opened. Amanda was there, with a cold expression I had never seen on her before. Behind her, I could see 2 older people sitting on my sofa in my living room. "Finally, you're here," said Amanda, without moving to let me in. "We need to talk." "Who are those people in my living room?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "They're my parents, Patricia and Richard. They've moved in with us. From now on, they'll be living here, so I suggest you don't make them uncomfortable." I felt as if I'd been slapped. My home, where I had raised my son, where I kept the memories of a lifetime with Frank, was now being invaded by strangers. "And where am I supposed to sleep?" I asked, feeling my voice tremble. Amanda pointed toward the garage. "Your things are there. We've converted the utility room for you. It's small, but adequate." The utility room was a tiny space next to the garage, originally designed as a laundry room. It had no proper windows, just a small vent near the ceiling, and had always been damp and cold. The idea of living there, especially after heart surgery, was absurd. I looked past her and saw Richard standing up from the sofa. He was a heavy-set man with calculating eyes that looked at me as if I were an intruder in my own home. "Where is Thomas? I want to talk to my son," I demanded. "He's working," she replied dryly. "Besides, he agrees with all of this." I wanted to scream, to demand they let me in, to kick these strangers out of my house. But I had just left the hospital, I was weak, and I didn't want to cause a scene that might frighten my granddaughter if she was home. So I did the only thing I could do at that moment. I smiled. "Enjoy while you can," I said calmly. "This arrangement won't last long." Amanda's smile disappeared, replaced by a look of confusion. She clearly expected a different reaction. Without saying more, I headed toward the garage to see what they had done with my belongings. What I found left me breathless. 40 years of my life reduced to cardboard boxes carelessly stacked. Photographs of Frank, mementos from our wedding, the book collection I love so much, all piled up as if they were old junk. And the worst, the small utility room where they intended me to live didn't even have a proper window. While reviewing my belongings, I found a box with important documents. Among them, copies of the papers I had signed in the hospital. I examined them carefully, and what I saw froze my blood. They weren't insurance forms, but a complete power of attorney that gave Thomas and Amanda control over all my properties and finances. I vaguely remember the moment I signed them. I was half sedated, my vision blurry from the medications. Amanda had appeared with a folder full of papers. "They're just formalities, Mom," she had said with a smile that I now recognized as fake. "For the insurance to cover the operation. Sign here, and you won't have to worry about anything." And I, trusting her, trusting my own son, had signed without reading. An unforgivable stupidity that could now cost me everything. I was so absorbed in the documents that I didn't hear the light footsteps approaching until a small voice startled me. "Grandma, you're back!" Lily ran toward me with open arms, her brown curls bouncing with each step. She was wearing a pretty blue dress I hadn't seen before and carrying a small teddy bear I had given her on her last birthday. I hugged her tightly, holding back tears. The smell of strawberry shampoo in her hair, the softness of her cheeks against mine, the purity of her affection, for a moment, all the pain vanished. "Yes, my love, Grandma is back," I told her, stroking her hair. "You missed me so much. Mom said you were very sick in the hospital and might not come back," she said with the brutal honesty of children. I felt a chill. Had they told my granddaughter I might die? Or worse, were they preparing her for my disappearance from her life? "I'm much better now, sweetheart, and I don't plan on going anywhere," I assured her. Lily looked at me with her big brown eyes, so similar to Thomas's when he was little. "Then why are your things here and not in your room? And why are Grandpa Richard and Grandma Patricia in your room?" Before I could answer, Amanda appeared in the garage doorway. Her face hardened when she saw us together. "Lily, come here. Grandma needs to rest," she ordered sharply. "But I want to stay with her," protested Lily, clinging to me. "Not now," insisted Amanda, approaching to firmly take Lily's hand. "And remember that Grandma is a little confused lately. The doctor said she needs lots of rest and no strong emotions." Lily looked at me with concern. "Are you sick in the head, Grandma?" I felt as if I'd been stabbed. So that was their strategy, to make me appear mentally incapable, not only to my son, but also to my granddaughter, preparing the ground to declare me incompetent and thus justify having taken over everything? "No, sweetheart," I said calmly. "Grandma is perfectly lucid. I just need to rest a bit after the operation." Amanda shot me a warning look before taking Lily away, who waved goodbye with her small hand as her mother dragged her out of the garage. I was left alone in the utility room, surrounded by the remains of my life, finally understanding the true extent of the betrayal. They hadn't just taken my house, they were also trying to make me appear mentally incapable, to erase my existence little by little, starting by alienating me from my own granddaughter. That night, lying on the narrow bed in the utility room, listening to the sounds of the family dinner taking place in my dining room, I made a decision. I wasn't going to give up without a fight. If they wanted war, they would have it. But first, I needed to understand exactly what was happening and why. What I would discover in the following days would test not only my strength, but also everything I thought I knew about my own family. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of voices in the kitchen. I carefully peeked out and saw Richard, Amanda's father, sitting at my table, drinking from my favorite mug while talking animatedly on the phone. Patricia was preparing breakfast, acting as if the kitchen had always been hers. Yes, we've secured Mrs. Bennett's house. Now we need to focus on the other properties in the neighborhood. The shopping mall can't be built unless we have at least 8 more houses." I withdrew silently. So it wasn't just my house they wanted. There was a bigger plan at work. Over the next few days, I observed and listened. I behaved as if I had accepted my new position in the house, as a fragile and confused elderly woman. Amanda seemed pleased with my apparent submission, and gradually she and her parents lowered their guard. Thomas was hardly ever home, and when we did coincide, he avoided looking me in the eyes. One afternoon, I managed to talk to him alone. "Son, why are you allowing them to treat me like this? This is my house." Thomas looked nervously toward the door, as if fearing someone might hear us. "Mom, don't start. It's best for everyone. Amanda says you can't live alone anymore. You might hurt yourself. And because of that, I have to live in the utility room while her parents occupy my bedroom? It's temporary," he replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "Besides, you already signed the papers. Legally, the house is now in our name." They tricked me. They made me sign when I was medicated. Thomas ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he had made since he was a child when he felt cornered. "Mom, please, don't complicate things. Amanda says if you keep this up, we'll have to consider a nursing home." Those words were like a dagger. My own son threatening to send me to a nursing home if I didn't submit? But instead of showing my pain, I simply nodded, as if I were too confused to fully understand the threat. "I see," I said softly. "Well, I don't want to cause you problems, son." Thomas seemed relieved by my apparent surrender. He almost rushed to leave, but before he could, I stopped him with a question. "Just one more thing, Thomas. Do you remember what your father told you before he died? His last wish?" He tensed up. Frank, on his deathbed, had made Thomas promise that he would always take care of me, that he would never let me want for anything, especially love and respect. "That was a long time ago," muttered Thomas, not looking me in the eyes. "Time doesn't erase promises, son, especially those made to the dying." With that, I let him go. As I watched him walk away, I understood that the man I had raised, the child I had loved more than anything in the world, was now trapped in a web that perhaps not even he knew how to escape from. But I also understood that I couldn't count on his help. If I wanted to reclaim my life, I would have to do it alone. One afternoon, while everyone was out, I managed to escape from the house. I had been observing the family schedules for days, waiting for an opportunity. Amanda and Thomas worked late, and Richard and Patricia had mentioned they were going to see a property in another neighborhood, taking Lily with them. With difficulty, I took a bus to the other side of town, where Eleanor Jenkins lived, an old friend and former lawyer. We had known each other since college, and although our lives had taken different paths, we had always stayed in touch. If anyone could help me, it was her. Eleanor's house was a small apartment in an old but well-maintained building. When she opened the door and saw me, her expression went from surprise to concern in an instant. "Alan, what are you doing here? I was told you were in the hospital." "I was," I replied, suddenly feeling all the weight of the fatigue and anxiety of the last few days. "But now I'm in something worse than a hospital." Eleanor welcomed me with a warm hug, took me to her living room, and served me a cup of tea while I told her everything that had happened. The operation, the documents they had made me sign, how I had been relegated to the utility room, and what I had heard about the plans for the neighborhood.
Her expression became increasingly grave as my story progressed. When she finished, she took the copies of the documents I had brought with me and examined them with a critical eye. "Ellen, this is very serious," she said, her eyes scrutinizing every line of the power of attorney. "They not only tricked you into signing a power of attorney that practically gives them all your assets, but they have also emptied your bank account. See these withdrawals? Almost $50,000 in the last 2 weeks." She showed me the account statements I had found among my documents. Indeed, there were multiple withdrawals of large amounts, all made during my hospital stay. I felt like I couldn't breathe. It was the money that Frank and I had saved all our lives, intended to ensure a peaceful old age and to help Lily with her studies in the future. Our retirement insurance, gone in the blink of an eye. "How could they do this?" I murmured, feeling a mixture of rage and despair.
With the power of attorney you signed, they have legal access to all your accounts, explained Eleanor. But there's something else that concerns me. The way they made you sign these documents, taking advantage of your vulnerable state in the hospital, could constitute a case of coercion and fraud. Does that mean we could invalidate the documents? I asked, feeling a ray of hope. Potentially, yes, but we would need solid evidence. And there's something else, continued Eleanor, frowning as she reviewed the papers again. This name, Richard Wilkinson, sounds familiar to me. Let me investigate. She got up and went to her study, returning with her laptop. After several minutes of searching, her expression turned somber. I knew it. Richard Wilkinson has been involved in several real estate scandals in recent years. In Boston 5 years ago, he was investigated for alleged pressure tactics against elderly homeowners and for bribing municipal officials to change the zoning of certain neighborhoods. He was never convicted, but there was enough evidence for several families to file civil lawsuits. She showed me articles from local and regional newspapers detailing the accusations against Richard. The pattern was always the same. He would select neighborhoods with potential for commercial development, identify vulnerable owners, especially the elderly or people with financial difficulties, and use a combination of manipulation, pressure, and, when necessary, political connections to acquire properties at prices well below market value. And there's something else, added Eleanor, showing me another article. Wilkinson Investments, Richard's company, is associated with Aurora Developments, the construction company behind the shopping mall project in your neighborhood. It's a clear conflict of interest. I returned home just before the others got back, pretending I had been resting all the time. During dinner, I observed Richard and Patricia exchange complicit glances whenever Amanda mentioned how confused I was lately. "Yesterday, I found her talking to herself in the garden," lied Amanda, with an expression of false concern. "And then she couldn't remember where she had put her medicines. I think the operation has affected her more than we thought." "It's normal at her age," replied Patricia, with compassion so fake it almost made me laugh. "My Aunt Edith ended up the same way. In the end, we had to put her in a nursing home. It was best for her." "And for everyone," added Richard, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I bit my tongue and continued eating in silence, while inside me my determination grew stronger. I didn't know exactly what they were planning, but it was clear they wanted to get rid of me as soon as possible, probably to accelerate their plans with the neighborhood. Thomas, sitting quietly at the end of the table, barely touched his food. I noticed how he avoided looking at me directly, as if he feared what he might see in my eyes. After dinner, when everyone retired to the living room, I excused myself, saying I was tired, and went back to my room in the garage. Once there, I took out the mobile phone Eleanor had lent me. Mine had mysteriously disappeared days after my return, and sent her a message. "I need more information about the neighbors. I don't think I'm the only victim." 3 days later, I received a call from Eleanor on the secret phone. "I have important news," she said in a low voice. "I've contacted a journalist who was investigating Wilkinson. There's also a group of neighbors from your area who have been experiencing similar pressures. Come see me tomorrow if you can." Finding an excuse to leave wasn't easy. Amanda practically watched me 24 hours a day, but I pretended I needed to buy specific medications at a pharmacy on the other side of town. "I'll take you," Amanda insisted, with a smile that didn't hide her distrust. "No, dear," Patricia intervened. "To my surprise, we have to go see that property with Richard, remember? The agent is waiting us at 11 o'clock. "I can go another day," began Amanda, but Richard interrupted. "No, this is an urgent matter. The agent is only available today, and if we want to close that deal before Martinez, we must go now." Amanda hesitated, clearly annoyed at having to choose between watching me and attending what seemed to be an important meeting for their plans. Finally, ambition won. "All right," she told me, giving me money for a taxi, "but return directly and keep the receipt. I want to see exactly where you've been." Her tone was one you would use with a child, or worse, with someone whose word cannot be trusted. I nodded humbly, putting the money in my purse while inwardly rejoicing at this opportunity. At Eleanor's house, not only was she waiting for me, but also a serious-looking young man who introduced himself as Michael Reed, an investigative journalist from the Boston Chronicle. "Mrs. Bennett, your case is not unique," he explained as we sat in Eleanor's living room. "Richard Wilkinson is involved in a real estate speculation scheme that affects your entire neighborhood. He's buying properties because there are plans to build a large shopping mall. When it's officially announced, the value of those lands will multiply tenfold. And it's not the first time he's done something like this," added Michael, showing me newspaper clippings and documents on his tablet. "In Boston, 5 years ago, he used similar tactics. He was even investigated for bribing municipal officials, although he managed to avoid charges thanks to his political connections." He showed me photographs of Richard shaking hands with several local political figures, some of whom I recognized from the news. There were also internal City Hall documents, leaked by some anonymous source, suggesting irregularities in the approval process for the new shopping mall. "And my son? Is he involved in this?" I asked, fearing the answer, but needing to know it. Eleanor and Michael exchanged uncomfortable looks. "It's hard to know for sure," replied Eleanor cautiously, "but there are transfers of money from Richard's company to an account in Thomas's name. He could be being manipulated, or he could be an accomplice." Michael nodded, showing me some bank documents. "There are regular payments from Wilkinson Investments to your son's personal account, starting approximately 6 months before your operation. The last payment, for $15,000, was made right after you signed the power of attorney. The idea that my own son could be knowingly participating in a plan to strip me of everything I had was too painful to accept. I preferred to believe he was being manipulated by Amanda and her family, perhaps even threatened in some way. "Thomas has a small IT consulting business," I said, looking for an alternative explanation. "Perhaps they are payments for legitimate services." "It's possible," conceded Michael, although his tone suggested he thought it unlikely. "But the temporal coincidence with your operation and the power of attorney is at the very least suspicious."
Eleanor took my hand, seeing my distress. "Ellen, I know this is difficult, but we need to focus on how to protect you and recover what is yours. The truth about Thomas will come to light eventually." "What can I do?" I asked, feeling my strength starting to fail me. "We need evidence," said Mikhail, leaning forward with intensity. "Recordings, documents, anything that proves what they're doing, not just to you, but to the entire neighborhood." "We're also in contact with other affected neighbors," added Eleanor. Mrs. Martinez, who lives 3 houses down from yours, has been receiving veiled threats since she refused to sell. And Mr. Roberts, the retired baker on the corner, was pressured to sell with arguments about supposed health inspections that would put his pension at risk. And we also need to protect what you might still have, continued Eleanor. Do you have jewelry, important documents, anything of value they haven't found yet? I thought about the small chest I had hidden in the false ceiling of the utility room closet. It contained the jewelry Frank had given me over the years, including a pearl necklace that had belonged to his mother. I also kept there Frank's original will, where he left everything to me, and some bank documents from a small account that Amanda and Thomas didn't know about. Yes, I have some things hidden, I replied, but I don't know how to get evidence without being discovered. Eleanor took a small device, the size of a button from a drawer. This is a miniature recorder. You can carry it with you and activate it when they talk about their plans. But be careful, Ellen. If they discover what you're doing... She didn't need to finish the sentence. We both knew the situation could become dangerous, but I had nothing left to lose. We should also talk to your doctor, suggested Eleanor. If we can prove you were under the effects of strong medication when you signed those documents, we would have a solid argument to invalidate them. Dr. Harris, I remembered, the cardiologist who had operated on me. He was always very kind to me, and he seemed to distrust Amanda when she came to the consultations. Perfect, nodded Mikhail. I can contact him discreetly. I'm also investigating Richard's connections at City Hall. If we can prove the bribery, his whole scheme will come crashing down. I returned to the house with the recorder hidden in the lining of my purse, feeling like a spy in my own home. The idea would have seemed comical to me in other circumstances, but now it was a matter of survival. That night, during dinner, I tried to provoke a revealing conversation. I heard they're going to build something big in the neighborhood, I commented casually, taking a sip of water. Mrs. Martinez told me on the phone that someone offered to buy her house. It seems prices are going up a lot. Richard almost choked on his wine. Amanda shot me a warning look, while Thomas visibly paled. Have you been talking to the neighbors? Asked Amanda in a tense voice. Just on the phone, I lied, feigning innocence. I feel so lonely locked up here all day. Sometimes I call my old friends for a chat. Mom, you know it's for your own good, intervened Thomas, though he looked uncomfortable. The doctor said you need rest and tranquility. Of course, son, I nodded, docilely. It's just boring sometimes. Mrs. Martinez mentioned that someone offered her double the value of her house. It must be a very sought-after area. I don't think Mrs. Martinez knows what she's talking about, said Richard, regaining his composure. They're just neighborhood rumors. You know how old people are, always exaggerating things. The irony of including me in that category of old people didn't escape me, but I limited myself to smiling and nodding as if his words had no weight for me. But that night, when they thought I was asleep, I heard Richard, Amanda, and Patricia talking in the living room. I crept silently to the half-open door of my room, activated the recorder in my pocket, and strained to listen. We need to get rid of her soon, Richard was saying impatiently. Time is running out. The people at City Hall want answers next week, and Martinez is starting to give in. I already told Thomas his mother needs specialized care. He's almost convinced. A little more pressure, and he'll agree to put her in Green Meadows. Green Meadows was a nursing home on the outskirts of the city, known for being economical but with deplorable conditions. The idea of ending up there made me shudder. Don't say such things, Dad, said Amanda, though she didn't seem particularly horrified by the suggestion. We just need her to sign the final documents for the property transfer, and then she can go to the nursing home. We don't need complications. The problem is she's starting to ask questions, replied Richard. Today she mentioned old Martinez in the shopping mall. Someone must be talking to her. Impossible, said Amanda.
She doesn't have a phone, she doesn't go out alone, and Thomas assures she hasn't contacted anyone. Well, someone is giving her information, and we can't allow her to keep snooping around. Too much is at stake. I'll talk to Thomas tomorrow morning, said Amanda. It's time for him to make a definitive decision about his mother. Either he helps us resolve this problem, or he can forget about his part in the business. With my heart racing wildly, I retreated silently to my room. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was working at full speed, trying to find a way out. What I had discovered changed the whole panorama. It was no longer just a question of recovering my house. Now it was about surviving. The next day, when everyone was out, I called Eleanor with trembling hands. "They need to get me out of here," I told her, holding back tears. "They're planning to kill me if they don't get what they want." "What? Are you sure?" Eleanor's voice sounded alarmed. "I recorded them last night. Richard suggested they could cause me a fatal relapse if Thomas doesn't agree to put me in Green Meadows." There was a silence on the other end of the line, and then Eleanor's firm voice. "Listen to me carefully, Ellen. Don't go back to that house. Come directly to my apartment, right now."
"I can't just leave," I replied, though the idea was tempting. "They've hidden my documentation. I don't have access to my accounts, and if I disappear, they could accelerate their plans with the neighborhood." "Your life is more important than any property," insisted Eleanor. "I know, but it's not just about me. There are other people in danger, other neighbors they're pressuring. If I leave now, we'll lose the opportunity to stop them." After a long discussion, we reached a compromise. I would stay in the house a few more days, but with additional precautions. Eleanor would contact the journalist and a private detective friend of hers. Michael would present a preliminary report to his editors, preparing an investigative report. And I would continue gathering evidence, but with extreme caution. "Don't take risks," Eleanor warned me. "At the first sign of danger, get out of there immediately." We agreed on a code word. If at any time I sent her a message with the word lilies, Frank's favorite flowers, she would immediately call the police. What would happen in the following days would change my life forever, but not in the way they expected. Because at 70 years old, I had learned one thing. Never underestimate a grandmother with a broken heart and nothing to lose. That afternoon, while preparing dinner, as they had ordered me to do every day, "At least she can earn her keep," Patricia had said, I heard Amanda talking on the phone in the backyard. I crept silently to the kitchen window, activating the recorder in my pocket. "I already spoke with Dr. Sanders," Amanda was saying, pacing nervously next to the rose bushes I had planted years ago. "He's not Mom's cardiologist, but a geriatrician friend of Dad's. He's willing to certify that she suffers from progressive dementia. With that and the paper she already signed, we can admit her next week. Thomas is still hesitant, but I'll convince him." She paused, listening to whoever was on the other end of the line. "No, we can't wait any longer. The deadline to present the properties to City Hall expires in 2 weeks, and we're still missing 2 houses. Martinez is giving in, but old Gutierrez flatly refuses. We'll have to use more persuasive methods with him." I dropped the spoon in the soup, splashing the apron I was wearing. The noise alerted Amanda, who quickly entered the kitchen, putting away her phone with an abrupt movement. "What are you doing?" she asked, looking at the mess. "I'm sorry," I replied, feigning confusion. "I got distracted. I think I forgot if I had already put in the salt." Amanda looked at me with a mixture of contempt and satisfaction. "See? This is exactly what I was talking about. Every day you're worse. You can't even cook without getting confused." I murmured, lowering my head. "You're right. Sometimes I feel so lost. Maybe I do need specialized help." My parents' surrender seemed to please her. What she didn't know was that the recorder in my pocket had captured her entire phone conversation, providing me with another crucial piece of evidence. That night, when everyone had retired to sleep, I took the jewelry chest from its hiding place in the false ceiling. Carefully, so not to make noise, I packed the essentials in a small bag: some clothes, my medications, important documents, and of course, the recorder with the evidence I had collected over the last few days. I also wrote a letter to Thomas explaining everything I had discovered and asking him to reflect on his actions. I didn't know if it would do any good, but I felt I should give him one last chance to do the right thing. At 3 a.m., when the house was completely silent, I left through the back door. Despite the pain in my joints and the weakness from my recent operation, I walked 3 blocks to where Eleanor was waiting for me in her car, as we had agreed. "Are you sure about this?" she asked me as she helped me get in. "Completely," I replied. "If I stay, they'll kill me. Or worse, they'll lock me up in a nursing home where they'll drug me until I really lose my mind." Eleanor nodded and started the car. "I've prepared everything. You'll stay at my sister's house on the outskirts. No one will look for you there." During the following days, Eleanor and Michael, the journalist, worked tirelessly with the evidence I had collected. The recordings were damning: plans to bribe officials, conversations about how they had tricked me into signing documents, and even the veiled threat against my life. They also found other neighbors who had been pressured to sell their houses: Mrs. Martinez, Mr. Roberts, and the Peralta family. All told similar stories: intimidation, offers impossible to refuse, and in some cases dubious legal maneuvers to force the sale of their properties. Meanwhile, in my old house, chaos had broken out. According to an allied neighbor, Thomas had discovered my disappearance the next morning and had panicked. Amanda and her parents had called hospitals and police stations, but not to find me and make sure I was okay, but to report that an elderly woman with dementia had fled and could be in danger. What they didn't know was that we had already contacted the police, specifically Detective Morgan, an officer from the Economic Crimes Unit that Michael knew. We had presented the preliminary evidence to him, and although it wasn't enough for immediate action, he was interested enough to open an investigation. A week after my escape, I received a call from Michael. "Mrs. Bennett, we have everything. The police are ready to act. Detective Morgan has obtained a search warrant to investigate Wilkinson Investments and its connections with City Hall, but we need you to be present when they go to the house." I felt a knot in my stomach. The idea of facing Amanda, Richard, and Patricia again terrified me, but what terrified me more was the idea of never seeing my granddaughter Lily again, or of my son Thomas ending up in prison for complicity. "And my son?" I asked. "What will happen to him?" There was an uncomfortable silence before Michael answered. "It will depend on his level of involvement. The evidence suggests he was manipulated, but he still signed documents and allowed them to mistreat you. The judge will decide." That afternoon, I looked at myself in the mirror in the bathroom at Eleanor's sister's house. I saw an older woman with gray hair and deep wrinkles, but also determination in those tired eyes. I thought of Frank, of what he would have done in my place. He used to tell me, "Never give up, Ellen. There's nothing stronger than a person fighting for what is right." I won't give up, Frank. I promise you.
The appointed day arrived with a cloudy sky that threatened rain. The police car stopped a block away from my house, where I was waiting with Eleanor and Michael. Detective Morgan, a middle-aged man with a serious expression and perceptive eyes, explained the procedure to me. "We'll enter with a search warrant to investigate the crimes of fraud, coercion, and possible planning of homicide. You will accompany us to identify those involved and as the legitimate owner of the house. We also have a warrant to access the financial records of Wilkinson Investments," he added. "And the anti-corruption prosecutor is investigating the connections with City Hall. This goes far beyond your case, Mrs. Bennett. You've uncovered an important corruption network." I nodded, feeling my heart racing. As we walked toward the house, I saw the curtains in the window move. Someone had seen us coming. Detective Morgan rang the doorbell firmly. After a few moments of silence, the door opened. It was Thomas, with a pale face and deep dark circles, as if he hadn't slept in days. "Mom?" he whispered, surprised to see me. His eyes shifted to the police officers and then back to me, slowly understanding what was happening. "Thomas Bennett," said the detective, "we have a warrant to search this property and arrest Richard and Patricia Wilkinson, as well as Amanda Bennett, in connection with multiple crimes of fraud, coercion, and possible planning of homicide." Thomas stood paralyzed, unable to respond. Behind him appeared Amanda, with Lily in her arms. When she saw me, her expression went from surprise to hatred in a second. "What have you done?" she hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've caused?" "Justice," I replied simply. "That's what I've caused." The police officers entered the house. Lily, seeing me, squirmed in Amanda's arms, trying to reach me. "Grandma, you're back!" Amanda held her tighter, but Detective Morgan intervened. "Ma'am, please hand the child to her grandmother." With barely contained rage, Amanda let Lily run to me. I hugged her tightly, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling my heart fill again with that pure love that only a grandchild can inspire. "Grandma, I missed you so much," Lily said, clinging to me with her small arms. "Mom said you were lost and wouldn't come back." "I'm here, my love," I assured her, stroking her hair, "and I'm not going anywhere." Richard and Patricia were found in the study, trying to destroy documents. When the police escorted them out, Richard looked at me with a mixture of surprise and hatred. "How did you do it?" he asked. "You're just a sick old woman." I smiled slightly. "That was your mistake, Richard, believing that age made me weak, when in reality it has made me stronger and wiser than all of you put together." Amanda was the last to be handcuffed. As they led her to the police car, she turned to Thomas, who was watching everything in a state of shock. "Do something," she shouted. "Tell them she's crazy, that all of this is made up." Thomas looked at his wife, then at me with Lily in my arms, and finally at the waiting police officers. For a terrible moment, I feared he would choose to defend her. But then, to my surprise, he shook his head. "It's over, Amanda. What we did to my mother, what you convinced me to do, was wrong. I should never have allowed it." Amanda looked at him in disbelief before being placed in the police car. When the vehicles drove away, only Thomas, Lily, and I remained at the entrance to the house. The silence between us was loaded with pain, regret, and unanswered questions. Thomas took a step toward me, hesitating. "Mom, I raised a hand to stop him. "Not now, Thomas. There's a lot to talk about, but not today. Today, I just want to be with my granddaughter and reclaim my house." He nodded, with tears in his eyes, and stepped aside to let us enter. As I crossed the threshold with Lily in my arms, I felt as if an enormous weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I was home, again. The following weeks were a whirlwind of statements, trials, and revelations. Richard Wilkinson's scheme collapsed like a house of cards. Not only was the plan to take over the properties in my neighborhood discovered, but also bribes to municipal officials, forgery of documents, and a corruption network that implicated several important figures at City Hall. The case attracted national media attention. Michael wrote a series of articles that earned him a journalism award, and I found myself unexpectedly turned into some kind of heroine from many elderly people who had faced similar situations. Amanda, Richard, and Patricia were sentenced to prison. Amanda received 8 years for fraud, document forgery, and conspiracy to commit homicide. Richard, as the mastermind of the entire operation, was sentenced to 15 years, while Patricia received 6 years for complicity. Thomas, having cooperated with the justice system and demonstrated that he had been manipulated by Amanda, though that didn't excuse his complicity, received a lesser sentence with probation and community service. Our relationship was deeply damaged. Forgiveness would not come easily or quickly, but for Lily's sake, we both committed to trying to rebuild something of what had been broken. One afternoon, 6 months after everything had happened, I was in the garden planting roses when Eleanor came to visit me. "How are you, Ellen?" she asked, sitting on the bench beside me. I breathed deeply the scent of the damp earth. "Recovering day by day. The house is starting to feel like a home again, and Lily spends the weekends with me. Thomas, well, it's complicated, but we're talking." Eleanor nodded. "And what about the other neighbors? I heard Mrs. Martinez was able to recover her house as well." "Yes, and not just that," I smiled. "We formed a support group for elderly people who are victims of similar abuses. We meet every week at the community center. Can you believe we're already more than 20? "I'm not surprised," replied Eleanor. "Your story has inspired many people, Ellen. You showed that it's never too late to fight for what's right." I looked at the roses I had just planted, thinking of Frank and everything we had built together. This garden, this house, our son. Life gives and takes away, but it also teaches us to fight for what we love. "You know what Lily told me yesterday?" I commented to Eleanor while watering the new plants. "She said, 'Grandma, when I grow up, I want to be brave like you. That's worth more than any house or money.'" Eleanor smiled and squeezed my hand affectionately. "You're an extraordinary woman, Ellen. Never forget that."
The sun was beginning to set over my reclaimed garden, tinting the sky in orange and pink hues. Frank and I used to sit here at this time, holding hands, commenting on the events of the day. Now, although he was no longer physically present, I felt his presence in every corner of this place we had called home. "Have you thought about what you'll do with the compensation?" asked Eleanor, referring to the money the court had ordered them to pay me as compensation for the damages suffered. "Yes," I replied. "Part will go into a trust fund for Lily's education. The rest, I'm thinking of creating a foundation to help elderly people who face situations of abuse or scams. There are many who don't have the luck to count on friends like you or the resources to defend themselves." "It's a wonderful idea," approved Eleanor. "I could collaborate pro bono as a legal advisor." "I'll take you up on that," I smiled. "I've already talked to Michael, and he's willing to support the initiative from his newspaper. And surprisingly, Thomas also wants to help. I think it's his way of trying to redeem himself." Talking about Thomas still produced mixed feelings. The pain of his betrayal persisted, but I also saw his genuine efforts to change. He regularly attended therapy, spent more time with Lily, and had begun visiting elderly people in nursing homes as part of his community service. I didn't know if our relationship would ever be what it once was, but at least there was hope that we could build something new from the ashes. "How's the divorce going?" asked Eleanor cautiously. "It's progressing," I replied. "Amanda still refuses to cooperate from prison, but Thomas's lawyer says that won't stop the process. The most complicated thing is the issue of custody of Lily, but with Amanda serving a long sentence, it seems likely that Thomas will obtain full custody. And you? Have you thought about requesting some type of shared custody as a grandmother?" I shook my head. I don't want to complicate things further. Thomas allows me to see Lily whenever I want, and that's enough for me. Besides, we're living in the same house for now, so I'm with her daily. Thomas had temporarily moved into the guest room while looking for a new apartment. The cohabitation wasn't easy, but we both made an effort to maintain a peaceful environment for Lily's sake. Eleanor stood up, brushing the dirt from her hands. "I should go. Ernest is waiting for me for dinner. Do you want me to come pick you up tomorrow for the meeting with the lawyer?" "I'd appreciate that," I nodded. These legal procedures still seem overwhelming to me sometimes. After saying goodbye to Eleanor, I stayed a while longer in the garden, watching as the first stars appeared in the sky. The gentle breeze swayed the newly planted roses, and from somewhere nearby came the sound of children playing. My life had changed in ways I never would have imagined. I had experienced the most painful betrayal, but I had also discovered a strength in me that I didn't know I possessed. I had lost trust in my son, but I had gained a new and meaningful purpose. Suddenly, I heard Lily's voice calling me from the house. "Grandma, Dad says it's time for dinner." "Coming, sweetheart," I replied, getting up from the bench. As I walked toward the house, I thought about all the elderly people who, at this very moment, might be facing situations similar to mine. Vulnerable people, frightened, not knowing who to turn to. I promised myself that my story would serve to help them, to give them hope and tools to defend themselves. Dinner that night was quiet. Thomas had prepared pasta, Lily's favorite dish, and although the conversation between us was still somewhat tense, there were moments of genuine warmth, especially when Lily shared anecdotes from her day at school. "Today, the teacher asked us to draw our favorite person," said Lily as she twirled spaghetti on her fork. "I drew you, Grandma, with your gardening hat and gloves." "Really?" I smiled, deeply moved. "I'd love to see it." "I'll bring it," she exclaimed, jumping from her chair and running to her backpack. Thomas and I were left alone for a moment. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully interpret: regret, shame, but also something akin to admiration. "Mom," he said in a low voice, "I know it's still early, and I probably will never be able to fully repair the damage I did to you, but I want you to know that I'm truly proud of you, of your strength, your determination. You were braver than I was." The words took me by surprise. It was the first time since Amanda's arrest that Thomas had spoken so directly about what had happened. "We all make mistakes, son, some more serious than others. The important thing is to learn from them and move forward." "I'm trying. I really am." Lily returned running, holding a colorful drawing where you could clearly see an older woman with a wide-brimmed hat, gardening gloves, and a huge smile, surrounded by flowers. "It's beautiful, my love," I exclaimed, hugging her. "I'll put it in a frame and hang it in my room." "The teacher said it was very pretty," explained Lily proudly. "She also said, 'I'm very lucky to have such a brave grandma.'" Thomas and I exchanged a look over Lily's head. In his eyes, I saw a glimpse of the son I had raised, of the boy who had once been the light of my life. Perhaps, with time and effort, we could rebuild something of what had been broken between us. That night, before going to sleep, I took out the old photograph of Frank from the drawer of my nightstand. His smiling face looked back at me with those kind eyes that had always been my refuge. "I did it, Frank," I whispered, running my fingers over the outline of his face in the photograph. "I got our house back, and I think, little by little, I'm also getting our son back." The next day, I received an unexpected call. It was Mrs. Martinez, one of the neighbors who had also been a victim of Richard Wilkinson's pressures. "Ellen, we're organizing a meeting at the community center," she said with an enthusiastic voice. "We want to form an official association to defend the rights of elderly people in situations of vulnerability. We'd love for you to be the president." Me? I asked, surprised. I don't know if I have the necessary experience for something like that. You have something much more valuable, she replied. You have the experience of having faced and defeated those who tried to take advantage of you. You're a symbol for all of us. I know that I would like to help in any way I can, and that is a good purpose. After thinking about it for a moment, I accepted. I didn't see myself as a hero or as a symbol, but if my experience could help others, I was willing to share it. The first meeting of the association, which we decided to call Dignity and Respect, was held a week later. The small hall of the community center was packed. Not only were the neighbors from the area present, but also people from other parts of the city who had read Michael's articles or had heard about our case. I felt overwhelmed seeing so many expectant faces, but when I began to speak, the words flowed naturally. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over, I told them. I found myself homeless, penniless, betrayed by my own family. But I discovered that as long as there's life, there's hope, and that never, regardless of the age we have, should we give up fighting for what is right. I told them my story, not omitting the painful details, but also emphasizing the resources and strategies I had used to defend myself. I talked about the importance of keeping copies of important documents, of having a reliable support network, and of knowing the legal rights that protect us. Age doesn't make us weak, I concluded. It makes us wise, and that wisdom is our most powerful weapon. The applause was overwhelming. After the talk, many people approached to share their own stories or to ask for advice. Among them, an older woman, fragile in appearance but with lively eyes, shook my hand firmly. "Thank you," she said with a trembling voice. "My son and his wife have been pressuring me to give me my apartment. After listening to you, I've decided that I won't do it. I'll seek legal help tomorrow." Her determination deeply moved me. It was exactly what I hoped to achieve. Inspire others to defend themselves, to not give up in the face of pressure or abuse. In the months that followed, the association grew rapidly. We established a helpline, organized workshops on legal rights and fraud prevention, and began to collaborate with volunteer lawyers who offered free advice to elderly people in vulnerable situations. Thomas, true to his word, also got involved. He used his IT knowledge to create a website and a simple application that allowed elderly people to report suspicious situations and receive immediate help. It was his way of redeeming himself, of transforming his mistake into something positive. A year after the arrest of Amanda and the Wilkinsons, I received an invitation to give a talk at a national conference on the rights of elderly people. It was the first time I would travel alone since the events that had changed my life, and I felt nervous but excited. The night before the trip, as I was packing my suitcase, Thomas entered my room with Lily, who was holding a small package wrapped in colorful paper. "We wanted to give you something before your trip," Thomas said. Lily handed me the package with a radiant smile. "Open it, Grandma!" Inside was a beautiful silver brooch in the shape of a rose. It was elegant, but simple, exactly the kind of jewelry I liked. "It's to bring you luck for your talk," explained Lily, "and to remind you that we love you very much. We chose it together. We thought it would go with any outfit, and, well, roses have always been special to you." The gesture deeply moved me. It was a small step, but significant, on the path to reconciliation. "It's beautiful," I said, hugging them both. "I'll wear it with pride." The next morning, as the train took me to Chicago for the conference, I reflected on the extraordinary turn my life had taken. At 71 years old, when many thought I should be retired and quiet, I found myself embarked on a new mission with a renewed purpose. The conference was a resounding success. My talk, titled "Never Too Late to Fight: How I Reclaimed My Life and My Dignity," received a standing ovation. Journalists from several national media interviewed me, and representatives from similar organizations from other cities asked me for advice to replicate our association model. It was overwhelming but gratifying. Each person who approached to thank me or to share their own story reminded me why all the pain had been worth it. One night, while responding to emails in the hotel room, Thomas had taught me to use the computer, and it turned out I had a facility for technology. I received a video call from Lily. "Grandma, how's everything going in Chicago?" she asked enthusiastically. "Very well, sweetheart. I've met many interesting people, and everyone has been very kind to me. Did you see the interview on television? You looked gorgeous. My whole class watched it because the teacher said you're an example of, what was it? Resilience? Resilience, I gently corrected as smiling at her enthusiasm. It's the ability to overcome difficult situations and come out stronger. That's it. The teacher said you're very resilient, and I told her you're the best grandma in the world and make the best chocolate chip cookies. I laughed heartily, something I didn't do frequently before everything that had happened. It was curious how life turned. I had lost so much, but I had also gained a new perspective, a new purpose, and a deeper relationship with my granddaughter. When I returned from Chicago, I found another surprise waiting for me. Thomas had transformed an empty room on the ground floor into a small office for me, with a desk, a new computer, and shelves to organize the association's documents. "I thought you would need your own space for your work," he explained, clearly nervous about my reaction. "The association is growing, and you'll surely have more meetings and calls." "It's perfect," I said, genuinely moved. "Thank you, son." For the first time since everything had happened, we truly embraced. It wasn't an uncomfortable or forced hug, but a genuine one, loaded with complex but sincere emotions. The path to reconciliation would be long, but every small step counted. In the years that followed, the Dignity and Respect Association became a national reference in the defense of the rights of elderly people. We opened offices in several cities, published prevention guides, and managed to promote legislative changes to better protect older adults from financial and psychological abuse. Lily grew up to become a bright and compassionate young woman who spent her summers volunteering at the association. Thomas finally found forgiveness, both mine and his own, and together we rebuilt a different but valuable relationship. Amanda, Richard, and Patricia served their sentences without showing repentance. When Amanda was released from prison, she tried to contact Lily, but the girl, now a teenager, decided on her own that she didn't want to see her. We respected her decision, understanding that some wounds take generations to heal.
On my 75th birthday, the association organized a surprise celebration. The hall was full of people whose lives had been touched by our work. Elderly people who would regain their autonomy, families who had found peaceful solutions to their conflicts, volunteers who dedicated their time to our cause. As I observed all those smiling faces, I thought of Frank and how proud he would be. I thought of the dark days after my operation when I believed I had lost everything. And I thought about how, even in the most desperate moments, there is always a light, a possibility, a reason to keep fighting. Thomas handed me a commemorative plaque on behalf of the association. On it were engraved words that resonated deeply in my heart. To Ellen Bennett, who taught us that true strength is not in power, but in dignity, perseverance, and the courage to defend what is right, regardless of age or circumstances. As the sun set that afternoon over my rose garden, now more exuberant than ever, I felt a deep peace. Life had tested me in ways I never would have imagined, but it had also given me the opportunity to rediscover myself, to find a purpose beyond my traditional roles as wife, mother, and grandmother. At 75 years old, I had learned the most important lesson of all. It's never too late to start again, to defend what is yours,
and to show the world that age is not synonymous with weakness, but with wisdom and resilience. And as I watched Lily run through the garden that Frank and I had planted decades ago, I knew that all the pain had been worth it, because there is nothing more powerful than a grandmother fighting for her family and her dignity. Nothing at all.